Sex workers of Reddit, have any of you ever have a close friend or anyone you normally interact with daily be a surprise customer? What was the experience like, and how did it affect your interactions with them? When I was a cam girl, I would have many guys message me saying they were my cousin or something. They were not, just trying to play out a fetish, and I wasn't into it. So then one day a guy, in the main chat, said that he knew me and his name was AJ, fake name. I was like, yeah right, I've only ever known one AJ, if it's true what's my name? And sure enough, he put my real first name right there in the chat. We were in youth group in church together almost a decade before that. He became a regular. That happened with me and my estranged older half-brother once when I was camming. I messaged him on Facebook to confirm and we had a good laugh about it. Ha ha ha. Much smarter to private message than challenge them to put your private info in the main chat. But still, I think if any of my brothers had found me, I'd never be able to look them in the eye again. Glad y'all could laugh about it. Ha ha. My much younger brother was getting married, had a bachelor party at a strip club with a dozen or so high school friends. After about an hour there, a rather ordinary looking stripper comes on stage, takes off her top and our tables of guys goes wild, standing and applauding and hollering. I have no idea what is going on. The stripper looks through the stage lights, her eyes get really big, she grabs her top and runs off stage to the back. Bouncers come running over to our table, thinking we're starting trouble. Nope, it turns out all of the guys in his high school class had a history class with her a few years back. She later came out and talked with us, said she never thought she'd see someone, let alone 12, she knew, it was in the next town over. That seems a bit strange that she thought she would never have seen her classmates in the next town over. I would have thought it was inevitable. You know, they probably also went the next town over so they didn't risk being spotted by other classmates. And that is how the entire class had an impromptu reunion. Varsity Blues. I'm a stripper. My friend's dad came in. I hadn't seen him or my friend since high school. I accidentally asked him for a lap dance before I could tell who it was. He said no and I realized who it was as I walked away. He came in a few more times and avoided eye contact with me. When I was on stage he would look away. Another story, my first day as a stripper I saw two guys from my high school. We chatted, then they both paid for lap dances. This exact thing happened at my bachelor party. It was funny. My friend's dad had coached the stripper while on his daughter's soccer team. They had a pleasant chat and she went on to other patrons. It's so good to hear how mature and professional some can be under these circumstances. You just have to laugh some stuff off. She's got a job to do and Hess there on leisure time, it doesn't have to clash awkwardly, hey. Well, those sprints and lunges certainly worked out for you. We surprised a friend from university that was working at a strip club to pay for her studies. She just noticed us, winked at us and did her show as usual. 0 ducks, of any kind, were given by anyone. I had a friend at uni that was a stripper. I only found out because she got really drunk one night and told me. I always wondered how she managed to never get found out, but apparently it's 'cause students are always broke and can't afford it. If they ever do, it tends to be on a holiday abroad or a stag do, not in their uni town. I was a bouncer at a strip club in the college town I went to school in. I did run into some of my classmates from campus at work. Sometimes they'd come in for amateur night and get offered a job. Other times they worked for an agency and would end up there for a night for whatever reason. It was kind of an unspoken rule to not say anything. If we bumped into each other on campus I'd say hi to them. I ended up in a group project with one of them. It wasn't weird, it was like working on something in school with a coworker. I would say the only weird thing was ending up at a keg party where one of my coworkers was there, and when the cops came to bust it up I felt compelled to warn her and get her out of there before anything bad happened. I've never been able to resolve why I felt I needed to have done that. You wanted to protect a coworker from a bad situation. Nothing weird about that. Also, especially since he was the bouncer, so job habit mentality of protecting the coworkers probably kicked in. Are bouncers called bouncers because they bounce off troublemakers? Yes. I was a stripper back in the day. Halfway through a stage show realized that my flatmate's brother and his friends were there. That's how I was outed, lol. Nothing much changed. Suddenly, my flatmate had a lot more visitors. That flat suddenly had more comings and goings. Not a sex worker, but delivered a pizza to a known sex worker, and at the same moment I was about to knock on the door, a relative opens the door and watches me holding the pizza up to him. I couldn't do anything but laugh. He laughed too, maybe out of embarrassment, and as soon as the sex worker understood what was going on, she also started laughing. Never mentioned this moment to anyone who knows my relative. And he is grateful for that to this day. I had a classmate who was a stripper, and she was very open about loving it when people she knew came to see her at work and let her dance for them. She thought it was intimate in a fun, friendly way. I was talking to a stripper. She said she had grown up in a suburb about an hour away, and used to strip there. She said that ultimately there were too many guys from her high school who came in. I was not a sex worker at all, but I was a fine art model for a college for a while. There were so many people that I went to high school with that entered those classes over the 2 years I worked there. Usually they wouldn't say anything and I wouldn't say anything, and I would just get naked and pose for 3 hours lol. Sometimes we would chat after, but sometimes we would ignore each other and pretend it didn't happen. In college, one of my girlfriend's suite mates used to model nude for the art classes. Fast forward about 8 years, I went to a bachelor party for a friend and we all went to a strip club. One stripper came out wearing the naughty schoolgirl outfit and I recognized her as my girlfriend's suite mate. As I was turning to tell my friend, the groom, that I knew her, he turned to me and said he knew her. Turns out that when he managed a restaurant, she was one of his servers. His brother thought this was hilarious and paid her to do a lap dance for my friend. She had a great figure, but my friend never took his eyes off hers to where she would see him looking at her body. Even when she turned her back to him, he looked at the back of her head because he felt so uncomfortable. Worth every penny. Not for the groom, but for the rest of the brothers who were probably howling with laughter at how uncomfortable he was. Not a worker though, funny story. One night my best mate was in town, lived in another state, used to live here. We went out clubbing and eventually decided to go to the strippers. Pay our money, and as we enter, my friend notices a stripper laying on her back spread eagle for a guy. Highly drunk, he yells out, "Hell, how good is this?" The stripper hears and notices my friend, sits up and yells, "What are you doing in here?" My friend instantly went and sat in the corner, proper embarrassed. Turns out it was his cousin. Family gatherings are gonna be super awkward now. There was a girl I went to high school with who was basically a walking stereotype. She fit so well into the archetypal ditzy blonde mold that you might swear it was an act if you didn't know better. She was also ducking mean. This girl was a power bitch and wasn't really nice to anybody as far as I'm able to remember. People orbited her because she was hot and had everything. She never really bothered me because I did my best to be invisible, but the handful of interactions I ever had with her left me feeling unpleasant. Turns out she wound up being a pretty lucrative stripper later in life. I bought a lap dance from her, and while being nice is part of the job, it really did feel like in those brief few minutes that she did have a genuine personality shift. She was way more laid back, you could even hear it in her voice. She even commented about how she wasn't a bitch like I used to be, and I have nicer tits. It was a genuinely fun interaction. She seemed happier in comparison to the person I remembered. Maybe she had bad parents and was being controlling with her peers as a coping mechanism. It's funny that you mention that because the only thing I know about them was watching a brief exchange at a parent-teacher night. I don't know about her dad, but her mom was basically a human Barbie doll and fit the textbook definition of airhead. It actually seemed as though she was a bit embarrassed, but they were almost identical in both looks and behavior. This was all based on one period of observation though. Somewhat related, me and buddy Tom go to this sleazy strip club in different part of town. As soon as we walk in, he sees bartender he went to high school with who say, "Tom, you perv. What are you doing here?" Should have came back with the same question. Lol, my ex was a stripper and begged me to come see her years after we split. Does that count? Sure, I decount it.